1. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. You know, we always start with a question, and we got one that's going to make you think extra hard today because the words aren't really that complicated, but I think the deeper meaning of this really is. And I'm excited to hang out with the guy that asked this question. And so I'm going to just start with the question and like we do, and then we'll just unpack that as we move along. And the question is for you today is, do you have true clarity about your life and your business? And I thought about that and I'm like, clarity, yeah, I'm fine with that. Let's go on to the next. And then you got to kind of do a deep dive on what clarity means. And I'm like, crap, I got to get this guy on my show. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Tino Dietrich. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You are the founder and CEO of the Dietrich Institute. So let's start there. What is the Dietrich Institute?
We help business owners, entrepreneurs, high achievers to, I would say, find what you just described, that clarity in life.
Okay.
We're focusing on relationships.
Okay.
What a lot of people do not understand, the same way you went through that whole clarity process, is, what does that really mean?
Sure.
And people come to us and have well, most people want everything, and I say, you can have anything, but not everything. So you really need to find out what it is that you try and achieve.
Sure, that's awesome. And relationships, whether they're personal relationships, whether they're professional relationships,
True, true.
obviously are very important and key to our success in our business. I had one client, Tino, that said, "Hey, if I didn't have customers and I didn't have a team, this would be a great place to work." And it's like obviously doesn't make any sense, but in our day to day, it's crazy how many times we're in relationship and we don't even realize it. Again, personally, professionally, whatever. So I'm excited to unpack that. You're also founder and CEO of Schneider Golf USA. So fill us in on that. That's a left turn from the Dietrich Institute. So I'm just curious what's happening over there.
I guess I have an entrepreneurial bug, so to say. I got that entrepreneurial DNA, and I've been playing golf all my life.
Oh, great.
You know, then life kicks in, and you may not find these hours to spend on the course. So I stopped
Sure.
playing. Probably a lot of people can relate. And then I right after COVID, I was very sick, and I had to get back in shape. I had to lose I actually lost like over 90 pounds. So
Wow.
that was a journey in itself. But
Sure.
part of that success is clearly because I got back into golf. And playing golf, I came across this absolutely stunning golf ball. They actually had several golf balls, so I dig deeper, and it's a German company, and the official ball of the German PGA, so to say. It's called the DGB, and the German national team. And so I connected with the founder of the company, and we had a few discussions, and I convinced him that I would be a great business partner, and that's what it is today. I'm his business partner, and we're selling into Canada, the U.S., Latin America, across the world, so to say.
Wow.
And we just launched in January at the PGA show in Orlando, and
Okay.
that's the story, so to say. It came really more by coincidence, but then,
Sure.
because the balls are so good, they're so superior quality, and they're not as expensive as the, I would say, the usual suspects when it comes to premier
Okay.
golf balls.
Sure.
And who can afford, like always, to spend 60, $70 on a dozen of balls, right? That's crazy.
Especially when you lose them as quick as I do. So,
I'd say, hey, you're clearly the target group, and trust me, we got the balls, right? That's our claim
Sure.
to fame. We got the
There
balls
you
to
go.
change your game. So,
That's awesome. Well, I tell you what, I appreciate you jumping on today with us, and I want to dig into this clarity issue. There are a lot of people. Tino, listening right now around the globe that are very interested in learning about your journey from, right out of college. You kind of did a little bit of work in corporate, and then you jumped into being an entrepreneur. As we talked before you jumped on today, we were talking about how that you've been an entrepreneur pretty much your whole career. Did you
Yeah.
know that through college that that was going to be your journey, or did something just kind of, did you wake up one day and go, "Oh my gosh, I don't like my job. I want to start my own company"? What did that transition look like for you?
So I come from a family. I grew up with my mom who started selling curtains on marketplaces in Hamburg, Germany.
Okay.
Come snow, come sun, come rain. And I was there my whole life, and she became one of the most influential people in at that time in the German steel industry. So from selling
Okay.
curtains on the marketplaces and she was entrepreneur of the year and so on and so forth. So the classic, tale, classic story of from zero to 100. And I think, growing up with someone like that was a single mom who has that drive and lives that life. I kind of it rubbed off on me. Does that mean necessarily you are an entrepreneur? No, it does not. Just because your father is a doctor doesn't mean you become a doctor. But
Sure.
I early on learned, and I wrote a book, and in that book, as a kid, um, I wanted to buy a new toy, and my mom was like, "Well, if you have the money, you can do that," and I didn't. So what I
Right.
did is I created a marketplace with some friends from the neighborhood, and we started selling our old toys to get the money to buy new toys, and I I took a cut. So because I knew my mom was selling curtains, and I knew how that worked, so I allowed
Sure.
other people to come in, and I said, well, then I get if you sell this much, if you sell $1, I get like 10 cents from you, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was like 8, and and of course the parents heard about it, and then they went to my mom and said, "What's happening here?" And
Yeah.
I say it was the first version of eBay. And my mom freaked out and said, "You can't do that." Um, but that's me. I'm just
Yeah.
I don't know. It's in me for some reason,
Sure.
and I learned that, but I still went on a classic out of college into a classic role as the assistant of a CEO at a brewery, Löwenbräu, which is Lobenbrau in English.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And it was great, of course, beer is always great, but and then in the heart of Munich and whatnot. But it didn't take too long for me to wander off, and then I started with energy drinks. At that time, Red Bull and us, we
Okay.
were the first ones in the market. So everything came in my life. Things just happened, and then
Sure.
I just made something out of it, and that's just me. But to be fair, to answer that core question that people might ask themselves,
Yeah.
it took me a long, long time and a near-death experience to really go through something that I could have done earlier in my life, and get that clarity. And I think
Yeah.
if you don't have that, it's very difficult for you to become one in any field. It doesn't matter if you work in corporate America, if you work in corporate France or Germany, whatever, or you are an entrepreneur. And just by becoming an entrepreneur, you're not going to be happy if you don't know what it is that you truly want and truly desire.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Well, and I think that's where that's a great segue into clarity, because I'm guessing a lot of people listening right now, wake up, go to work, come home, go to bed, they have this routine. And I don't think there's a lot of intentionality. I don't think there's a lot of clarity. And I think those are the people that we're really wanting to talk to today, is what does that look like? I mean, your book, Unfogged, talks about 7 secrets to true clarity, true connections, and true success. And you started with clarity. And so if somebody was listening right now and this is kind of the first exposure that they've had to clarity, what are some kind of baby steps? What are some, beginning things we can ask ourselves or think about when we're thinking about clarity?
I believe that the answer often is when I talk to people, like, I know what I want. Listen, the way you started this conversation, this podcast, is exactly what's happening. People are like, I know what I want. I know what I need. I know.
Yeah,
Do you? And when we talk about relationships, we talk about relationships with everybody and everything, right? I mean, there's a relationship you have with money. That's a
I
relationship
got
to health. But you know what? The most important relationship is with yourself. And right there, you keep telling yourself stories and you tell yourself this and that until you believe it. It's shaped the way you've been brought up, right? The way you learned about something. Do this, then that is going to happen. Work more, you get more, you know? And because of all these beliefs and the way you're shaped and how you see things, that is really your reality. And your reality is not mine.
sure.
And mine is not yours. So that is where you need to start, but that sounds very um easy, but it's not, because simplicity is never easy. There is a certain point.
Yeah,
Einstein said that, you have to make things very simple, but not simpler than it simple is, right? So if you cross that point, you're making simple even more complicated, and that's your life. So you're trying to achieve 15 different things, you probably end up achieving nothing.
gotcha. So do
So
you think, I mean, in your talking about the relationship with yourself, full disclosure, Tino, I would have glossed right by that and I would have been like thinking, okay, relationship with my family, relationship with my team or
yeah,
my customer. People seem to bypass that yourself relationship. When you're working with people, is that a big blind spot for people that they kind of just bypass that and immediately try to go to outside relationships?
yeah, they do 100%, because they don't really see that. And it's interesting because a lot of people who are hyper successful in business are hyper not successful in personal lives.
Sure.
I have CEOs who run, several hundred people companies, and they come home and they can't even run a four people household, right?
Right.
And the but it's almost like living the life of a savant. We're kind of very good at this one thing and one thing only,
Sure.
but there is a disconnect, and the disconnect is the person, the person that actually is taking place in both sides, in the business and at home. And it's if you can't really push and pull this together, you're not as a person, from mental health problems to any problems, that's where people start to have a drink to take the edge off and stuff like that. And you keep
Sure.
telling yourself these stories,
Yeah.
and blink down the road, you're super surprised, when the wife files for divorce. 70% of wives are the ones filing for divorce. It's not
Yeah.
men do that.
Wow. Well, and I'm thinking, so when you have unfogged, like you're assuming people are in a fog, which is kind of the opposite of clarity, and then that creates some clarity. If people are listening right now, Tino, and they again, this is new to them, thinking about a relationship with yourself, where do you start? I mean, because I can say for myself, there's been plenty of times where I sat with a blank piece of paper and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get to know myself better, and like I'm either get bored, I get distracted, nothing gets on the page. How do you get people to start at, like at the Dietrich Institute? What's like the first step?
First of all, it really depends on you. That's the
Okay,
most important thing. And I don't think that coaching is necessarily to tell people what it is that they want and define that. It's really more like empowering people, how to do and how to fulfill whatever it is that you feel you need to do. So that what is yours and yours only. Um, it's very clear. So here's me 5 years ago during COVID. I was sick for a long time. I ended up in the urgent care center. I told my wife I'd be back for dinner. I just get some medication because I had pain and whatnot. But from the urgent care center, I was sent to the emergency room. I collapsed in the emergency room. I ended up in the ICU. A priest read me my last rites over the phone. I was handed the phone to say goodbye to my family
Wow.
because literally they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Later on, we figured out that it was my heart and not the lungs.
Okay.
But at that time, it was all so early on. So
Sure.
they didn't know, and they put me on an ECMO machine, which is all horrible, and I had to be put into a coma. But before, I they put me into the coma, I said goodbye to my family. But, laying there and understanding that this may be it, you get that clarity.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because all of everything becomes really unimportant.
Sure.
All of a sudden, all these things that today matter a lot at that point in time matter no more.
Yeah.
So, what I'm trying to say here is you don't necessarily have to go through that. But if you would have put a piece of paper in front of me and a pen and say, write
Yeah.
down this one thing that matters to you, one thing, I would have written that down. It came to me like, all of a sudden there's a lot happening in a very short amount of time, you know, and we're
Mhm.
wasting a lot of time by but trying to do too many things at the same time, pushing
Sure.
away things, and so on and so forth. We really need to declutter our life. That is
Yeah.
what matters, and understand what it is that we really are here for. Life is a gift, and you need to understand what your purpose is. You're here for a reason, and you
Sure.
need to understand that. And if you don't understand that, you're still missing your purpose
Yeah.
until the point you will. Uh, Unfortunately, many people do what you said. They have their routine and they're in this rat race and so on and so
Yep.
forth. And
Yeah.
then they realize, like me, I did realize that at a moment where it was over. For me, it was like, man, now I realize that. And then I
Yeah.
start praying and begging for a second chance to make a first impression. Fair enough, I
Yeah.
got that. I got what most people probably do not get. But if I
Sure.
talk to other people in similar near death experience, we all went through the same thing.
Yeah.
That really is happening to you when you are in that position. And
Sure.
you don't need to do that. You can. I've had points in my life where that message was sent to me and I didn't get it because I'm
Yeah.
maybe too stubborn or maybe I'm a very difficult learner. But
Sure.
that's why I do what I do, right? I'm trying to help people to understand that message that has been
Yeah.
sent out every day,
Yeah.
to not go through that and not realize when when you're about to say goodbye, to say, oh man, I'm now 85 years old. I should have done this 30 years ago,
Right.
right?
Sure.
What we
Yeah.
should have is over.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this sounds weird, but I just want to say thanks for going through that because you've gone through that, you're trying to help others to not have to go through that.
Yeah.
And so, that's where I think this is so powerful is, trying to get clarity in your life. I'm total agreement that we have a purpose here. And I think it exceeds again waking up and going to bed and just kind of doing this wash, rinse, and repeat type of thing. So
Yeah.
when you talk about your true clarity and your seven secrets, are there anything from that book? I mean, I want a bunch of people to get the book out of this
Yeah.
today, but is there one of the secrets that you can share with us just to kind of wet our whistle for that?
So first of all, the idea behind the seven secrets is almost like there are more than seven, and you can combine them in any way, shape, or form. So maybe it becomes 12 secrets for you.
Okay.
But the journey is what matters. And if you don't take the first step, right, of that journey, then if you don't know where you want to go, anyway will lead there. So
Sure.
you really need to understand. And I say, life is the matrix, right? You have a point A and you define a point B, but if you don't know where A is, it is very difficult for you to get to B because how do you get there if you don't
Yeah.
know where you are?
Sure.
So that all is, and the seven secrets to me are everything around that, right? So the most important pillar is to really peel down, get unfogged and get clarity about who you are, what you are, where you want to go, why you want to go there, truly, what it is that you truly desire, which is
Sure.
why we call our program the True Alpha program. It's true, meaning you don't want a happy life. You want a true life, right? You want a true marriage. What does true mean to you? And
Hmm.
then everything else becomes, and that's what I'm saying, once you understand that, then you can get the tools and the mechanism and the secrets and the
Sure.
beacons that will get you there.
Sure. Well, and I'm just curious because I feel like some people listening right now, Tino, probably feel like they don't even deserve
Hmm.
to have that, whether it's the clarity or, what is it that you really want? And again, let's just, I mean, maybe somebody might say want to sail around the world and, whatever. I don't know what everybody's kind of thought process is. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious, I mean, what do you say to somebody that inwardly doesn't feel like they deserve it for whatever reason? I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
That means that someone, maybe more than just one person, and something has taught them that, right? That's
Okay.
that's the I call these crappy rules, cruels. They really hold you back because someone says something, and but nobody knows, right? Everybody assumes. We're as a species, we believe in stories. So everything we learn, everything we experience is based on stories, from the Bible to the school books to everything. It is all a
Sure.
story. That's how we come together, and that differentiates us from any other species. So a company is a story. A company is a story. An entrepreneurial journey is an idea that is put on paper and then put into real life action. So from a thought to words to action. And if you believe that you do not deserve that,
Yeah.
that itself is wrong, as wrong as you say the sun sets in the morning. Sure,
Yeah.
at a certain place in the world it may, but not for you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and I think I want to unpack this. So let's take a break. And then I really want to unpack this because I think there's some really good stuff here that our listeners need. I know I need. If nothing else, forget these listeners, just focus on me. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Tino Dietrich, the founder and CEO of the Dietrich Institute, and we are talking about the secrets to true clarity. There's a great book that Tino wrote called Unfogged: Seven Secrets to True Clarity, True Connections, and True Success. And we've been unpacking this because I think it's important. So I think you hit on something really important. There's
Mhm.
probably somebody listening right now that someone in their life is, saying you don't deserve this or you'll never amount to anything. Maybe it's internal that they say that about themselves. So, like at the Dietrich Institute, do you deal with that self-talk? Do you deal with that type of scenario with people? And I'm just curious if
Yeah,
that's come up a lot.
it does come up a lot, and not necessarily in the beginning. Sometimes it happens throughout the process,
Okay,
because as I said earlier, you kind of look at it like an onion, right? You peel off the outer layer and the outer layer and the outer layer. And it's not like a banana where you just have one layer and there's the banana, right? It's
sure.
more,
Okay,
and some people are really good at it. Other people have a lot of difficulties because there's a almost like a shield, right? So you keep telling yourself a story to protect yourself. And when you let go, that means that you become vulnerable. A lot of people don't like that because, who wants to be vulnerable? But I say become vulnerable, and I say if you're vulnerable, be boldly vulnerable, right? So
yeah,
take that And it's part of it's yin and yang, right? It's day and night. You are vulnerable if you like it or not. And just by
Sure.
pretending you're not, you're telling yourself a story. So that's how it is. And sometimes it take longer. Sometimes there are several stages where you become vulnerable at different levels. It really all depends on how you have been brought up, what values and beliefs you've been taught and follow. And there are people who really begin to see that and have all of a sudden clarity where they say, I can't believe that I've done this for 5 years, 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
And, sometimes people are crying, when they realize that. Sometimes people are very angry.
Sure.
Whatever emotion that triggers, it's because of a thought. Any emotion is triggered because of a thought process, right?
Sure.
Fear, which I don't believe in, but that's just me.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and I wrote down, so like I'm guessing there's people that they've kind of told themselves a story that this is it.
Yep.
This is it. And then I think just looking at those words, I wrote them down, and then I just kind of, if you move them around and you ask yourself a question, is this it? I'm guessing that once you ask that question, you start to find that this might not be it, and there might be some other things in your life that you haven't yet tapped into. You haven't had the privilege of encountering yet. So, are a lot of people coming in with just like this is it mentality, and then you're at the institute, your whole goal is to try to open up their ideas and their perspectives. Is that a
Yep.
fair statement?
That is a fair statement because we are part of a system. And, you know, when you run a company or you're part of a company, there are processes and procedures and, everything works like sometimes better, sometimes worse.
Yeah.
But it works like a clockwork. So nobody wants you to step outside of your swim lane and because that's just how the system works, and the
Sure.
system called life works in a very similar way, right? So when you begin to question certain processes and procedures, that's not necessarily good for the system. And anybody telling you a story is telling you a story for a reason. Advertising tells you a story, so you buy their product, blah, 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 right? So
Yeah.
you really need to understand that first, any story you're told is there because of a reason. And
Okay.
then you can identify the reason, and then you can ask yourself, is that a reason that you believe in? Do you understand that? Is that really, do you agree with that or you don't? And that is the system. And I think that really, to reshape that perspective on life,
Hmm.
all of a sudden you look at things and you say, huh, looks completely different.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm trying to find a way to put myself in this spot because, like I said, I'm the guy that does the blank sheet of paper, and then it's like, okay, who are you, and what do you want to be, and where do those who, what, when, where, why questions.
Yeah.
Those are hard, and especially if your story. I was curious if can your story be told to you from yourself like inaccurately? Like I couldn't
It
ever do X or I can't do that. I mean, those are stories I tell myself, right?
Yeah, because but you just repeating something that's been told. Either it's been told to you or you saw it on Instagram, so kind of it wasn't told
Okay.
to you, but you learned it. No, I mean
Sure.
that really is what it is, right? You look at young kids and they follow a certain ideal,
Okay.
which may not be. I mean, maybe it's even fake now, with AI and everything. So you
Right.
kind of shaping reality. I mean, there is that story, and I don't want to take too much of this time, but you should research it about the color blue, where in ancient times the color blue didn't exist. So when you look in old books, they describe the ocean as dark gray, or the sky was white, and blue as a concept, as a color, was introduced later. So
Wow.
people couldn't see it, and they found this tribe in Africa, and it was the same thing. So they could see all shades of green, like your cup, all shapes of green, but they couldn't see blue. So for them, blue was different shade of green. And that is what it is. So if you don't know what you don't know, you don't see it. You don't
Yeah,
experience it. And color actually is something that doesn't exist anyways because it's light waves that are transferred in our eyes and brain and whatnot, right? So that's how we learn. And when you learn something, you learn a word, you learn a term, you learn an experience. It is based on what you learned. But obviously, it's tougher to unlearn that, like a
sure,
habit, a bad
sure.
habit, right?
Yeah.
But the only person that can do that is you.
Hmm. And what do I, so if I am stuck in that spot, Tina, where I am either listening to somebody else's story about me that's limiting me, or I'm telling myself those things that are limiting me, like I could never start my own business, or I could never grow it to X. There are some self-limiting thoughts that come to a lot of the people that are listening right now. So, what do you do with those? Because I'm guessing some of them are blind spots. We don't even know we're doing it. I'm guessing if the less that we're aware of ourselves, the less we are even aware of these self-limiting thoughts. So, how do you determine what's real and what's not in that situation?
First of all, real is what real is to you. That's the most important thing. And people say what's right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. The path is the path. It's your path, and you dictate it and you decide. So you need to really come down to a very simplistic version of yourself, which is difficult. That's a process. You
Yeah,
know, if I needed to lose 90 pounds, I couldn't do that in a week. I was clear that I couldn't do it. And trust me, when
sure,
I came out of hospital, I was able to walk for 2 minutes, 2 minutes only. So that was highly frustrating. And when
sure.
you walk 2 minutes and then you say, but you have to work for an hour, you look like, hey, 2 minutes and 1 hour. I will never get there. So that's
Yeah,
what you tell yourself. That's
sure,
the
sure,
first. Why? Because you're telling yourself you never get there, or if you continue to do that, you get 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and so on and so forth. So that's the path. There's nothing that can stop you from anything except you and yourself. And there's always a way. But you have to ask yourself, is that really what I want? Because if you
sure,
don't really want it, you're not going to be able to succeed. You just
sure.
maybe you tell yourself you want that, but that's not really what you want. Because when you get there, you're like, I still don't feel complete.
Wow. Okay. Well, and I think about that for you, take that step as an example. You could only walk for 2 minutes, but then
Yeah.
eventually you probably went to 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10. I
Yeah.
mean, but you had to tell yourself you could do it. If you would have continued to tell yourself that you can only do it for 2 minutes, you'd probably still be stuck in that 2-minute walk, I'm guessing, correct?
Well, they put literally they put a gun next to my head because they told me very simple, if you don't lose fast 20 pounds fast, you run a risk that you get a heart attack.
Okay.
So my heart was in a really bad shape. And so I was more afraid to die and get a heart attack. I said, I got to get out of this, So there
Yeah.
was there's a very good motivation,
Yeah.
to lose quickly, to go from 2 minutes to 5 minutes. But
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need that gun next to your head. But you
Sure.
need to understand one thing. If you're not happy, and happy, I hate the term, but for most people it relates to something. And
Sure.
you find that happy. But if you feel that something is wrong, something is wrong. It's your inner voice telling you something is wrong. Something is wrong. Trust me, it is. Don't
Yeah.
don't listen to anybody else but yourself. You are the most important person in your life because you can't help others if you're not in good shape.
Yeah.
Only the cup that overflows can share.
Sure. Yeah, they always say, right, in the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first and then
Ah,
work, help other people. But let's face it, I don't know about you, Tino, but that's hard when you think about you're a father, a husband, a grandfather, whatever the term is, a business owner, you have a team to take care of, you have a family to take care of. it seems like you, i.e., anybody listening, are pretty far down the list of taking care of themselves as opposed to all the people around them. So, I mean, are there any simple things that we can do for ourselves just to kind of really take care of ourselves first? Have you noticed anything that keeps coming to the top for people?
I think the first thing that you need to do is you need to prioritize yourself.
Okay.
But because, as you just said correctly, a lot of people put themselves on number two, five, 10, or maybe you're not even on your own list.
Yeah.
So, you
Get on
know,
your own list. That's the word of the day. Get on your own list. That's a great
yeah,
one, Tino.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. And I love the prioritize because it's hard. We generally prioritize others before us when we're talking about business growth or customers, all that stuff, right?
And why? Why? Why is that? Because somebody told us that that's not right. Somebody told us that that concept is wrong, that you're
Yeah.
selfish. You know,
Selfish.
I, I,
Yep.
I, but that's wrong. I mean, selfish itself is probably defined completely different from what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You said yourself, like there is a reason why you put the oxygen mask on first and then the kid, right?
Yep.
There is a reason, and you have to put that logic behind the list logic.
Sure. But that's where the fog comes in, right? Because I think that's a big fog for people is they think they have to put everybody else first. And I think that it's good to serve other people. I also think that if you're unhealthy, like in that situation, if you wouldn't have lost that weight, but you would have continued to serve others in whatever
Yeah,
capacity that was,
I would not be here.
you wouldn't be here right now, right? So that's like, okay, win the battle, lose the war type of thing. It's really not the best. I love that you're talking that way because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs listening right now, Tino, really need that encouragement. And some people take it to the extreme. Oh, I get to go buy an RV or a boat or whatever, and maybe that's what it is. But a lot of times, just
It's
prioritizing
probably not.
yourself,
It's
right?
you see, this is where I think like there's a middle ground.
Yeah,
You're going from one extreme to another. Not
right.
good. So, you can take any concept and turn it upside down and make it look idiotic, right?
Sure,
No. So, be realistic. And it's so interesting to see that successful entrepreneurs and business owners who have a focus, a sharp mind in business. They're running their company, they're running their business, their department, whatever it is they do, even as a
sure,
doctor or a lawyer, right? But then they can really take the same principles and apply them to life.
yeah,
And that's really where I come in because I can really help these people so they understand. For most people, it's like, ah, come on, leave me away, get away with this bullshit, blah blah
yeah,
blah, meditation and journaling, and like,
yeah,
no, you journal in your company, you have a business plan, whatever it
yeah.
is. Maybe it's just in your mind, but you have a vision, you have a mission, so you
Right.
have, you know, and they're gonna I'd say, do you have a business? You have a budget. You follow your numbers, your KPIs, your metrics. What are your metrics in life?
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think you had people until you talked about that J word journaling because there's not a lot of entrepreneurs that probably enjoy that, but I think it's
But
helpful
they
to really.
do. But they do in business. You journal all the time. You're writing ideas down. You're like, oh, great. You go into a store, you see something like, oh, that. You take a picture, you send it to your marketing department. That's
Yeah.
journaling.
Yeah. No, great point. Tomato, tomato, right? So you got to just change the name of what it's called.
Exactly, which is why we call it different. We call blueprint and whatnot. So guys like it more. Like, yeah, let's put up a
Yeah.
blueprint, right? It's like, okay, cool, cool, cool.
Call it blueprinting then. We love that. That's awesome. There's some great stuff here. I want to, as we start to land the plane today, I just want to touch on success before we end because I think that's such a nebulous word. It's so hard to define. Like if you think about ice cream, it's pretty easy to define that. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of flavors and but you kind of get the concept. I think success is a lot harder. And I'm just curious, do you have an easy or a simple type of explanation of how you define success for yourself?
I look at it like a bullseye.
Okay.
So for me, the center, obviously, and you throw a dart, it's the way and grade you get to the center. Meaning, if it takes you too long or too much effort, and where are you when it comes to the bullseye? Are you in the bullseye? Are you far away? So that really defines success. And the goal always has to be the least amount of input, right, to get to as close as possible towards the bullseye.
Hmm. And that's where I think people they don't I struggle run when I talk to people asking them about success, I struggle getting an answer
Of
because they're
course.
not really sure. They haven't done that they don't have that relationship with themselves. They haven't stopped long enough to kind of really do that, right?
And it is much more comfortable. And that's why I hate the term comfort. It's much
Yeah,
more comfortable to do what you say because it's so much easier to blah, 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 blah than to have a very clear, simple answer.
yeah. Yeah. And if you don't have an answer of where your company's headed, it's really hard for your team to have that and your customer. Nobody really knows, right? They don't understand where we're headed. And I sometimes some of the things we talk about here feel like they're not mandatory, but they're like an elective course. Well, this seems to be like one of those things that this is not an elective, this is mandatory because otherwise you're just going to be stuck out there floating in who knows what your whole life. And like you said, by the time you're 85, people are looking back and going, man, I wish I would have. And I
Yep.
think living with regret is probably a really ugly spot to be.
I've
You
been
know,
there. Trust me. I've been there, and when somebody then hands you the boarding ticket for your last flight, you feel like shit. Excuse my French.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you had that second chance and it did give you that clarity. I just, again, I hope that people listening today don't have to go to that extreme in order for them to get clarity. That's why the
Yeah.
Dietrich Institute is around to help people with that clarity. So, a couple questions before I let you go, Tino. What would your tip
Yeah.
of the day be today for somebody listening? Maybe it's something that we already covered, maybe it's something that we haven't, but what would you give as your tip of the day today?
I think the tip of the day is twofold. And we talked about it. We said put yourself on the list. Understand that,
Yep.
which also means that you need to form that relationship with yourself, and not just a relationship, a true
Yeah.
relationship with yourself. True
Wow.
means healthy, means honest. And again, that's not done in a day. That's like
Yep.
losing 90 pounds. It takes some time and effort. But that
Yeah.
is my tip of the day because that
That's awesome.
puts you on the trajectory.
Sure. Well, and so put yourself on your list and, make sure that you have a relationship with yourself. If somebody's listening right now, Tino, and they don't know where to go next, they are understanding and there's some agreement, some buy-in to what you're talking about, and they want to learn more about this, they want to learn more about the Institute, or they want to connect with you. What's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah. So we have a landing page for this podcast in particular, which is thedietrichinstitute.com/PPP.
Wow. Awesome. Perfect. So Dietrich,
E.
Dietrich
Yep. Diet like a Diet
Institute.
Coke, and rich,
Oh,
the
that's right.
opposite of
Diet
poor.
Rich.
The rich diet.
DietRichInstitute.com// PPP. So
Yeah.
if you want to connect with, Tino in that scenario, there jump on that spot because I think this is again one of those topics that it would be super easy to just jump onto your next podcast, jump out of the car, finish this and say, yeah, sometime I'm going to do that. And I think this is really, we encourage people each week, just don't jump into your next thing. In this case, jump onto dietrichinstitute.com/PPP and at least start the dialogue. Maybe you have a question that we didn't answer. Maybe you have a situation where you need some guidance on. That's exactly why Tino's on today, is to be able to connect with those people, because
Mm.
if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, it's hard to have good relationships with others. It's hard. I mean, it just kind of, it's like building on sand. You
Yep.
can't do a lot
Yep.
of success on sand. We need to be on a rock. And in this case here, building on a healthy you is definitely going to be way more successful than, again, whether it's overweight like that, whatever it is. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just have a really healthy relationship with yourself. I think that's a great thing. And like Tino said, put yourself on your list and please, make yourself available to that, because I run into people, and I know for myself, sometimes I listen to a podcast and I'm like, I'm going to do something with that information. And then I get busy and then I forget and I don't do that. So this is solid information that really you need to be able to jump on this and to really start understanding yourself. So thank you so much, Tino, for hanging out with us today. It was a great
Pleasure.
a great reminder to really have a true relationship with yourself. And again, like I said before, I just went right to, when you're talking about good relationships, I went to with other people. So thank you for the reminder and teaching me to consider myself first before that. And again, if everybody's struggling with what that looks like, just think about those oxygen masks. You put yours on first so that you are in a good spot to be able to help those people around you. And
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
what we're talking about here. So thank you, Tino, so much for hanging out. Again, if
Thank you for
somebody
having
wants to,
me. Yeah.
yeah, if someone wants to get a copy of the book Unfogged, it's on Amazon. Is that the best place for people to grab it?
Yep. That's probably the fastest and best way. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So Unfogged, 7 Secrets to True Clarity, True Connections, and True Success. So again, thanks, Tino, for hanging out, and I can't wait to keep learning from you and watching where this goes. So I appreciate all your help today.
Thank you. Thank you.